Ten myths that people still believe. Men think about sex every 7 seconds. When you think about it, there is a whole gender of people that could refute the myth about men thinking about sex every 7 seconds if they were so inclined. That they haven't either shows that men find at least some level of familiarity in the statistic, or that some myths are just too amusing to bother debunking. Either way, the figure happens to be as false as it is entertaining. Quite simply, there is no factual basis. The closest thing to any scientific backing comes from Alfred Kinsey's data, but even he only went so far as to argue that 97% of men thought about sex between a few times a day and a few times per month, with 54% falling into the daily category. We only use 10% of our brain. It is only on account of modern science that we can now recognize and identify the specifics of brain activity in humans. However, that hasn't stopped people from generations past from passing along the mythical 10% figure in describing what percentage of our brain capacity we use. Contemporary testing of the brain's functioning areas has come to show that every area of a healthy brain actively does something to contribute towards overall cognition and thought. The 10% figure is believed to have originated from self-help guru-driven statistics about using 1/10 of our brain's power, which is critically different from using 10% of our brain. Cats always land on their feet. Cats are, without question, among nature's most agile and well-balanced creatures, leaping around from surface to surface with a savvy sure-footedness. But that doesn't mean their 4 paws can get the job done every time. Without always being able to predict the security and stability for their next destination, felines are often prone to bumping into things, losing their grip, falling on their side, or even breaking a paw or leg. The myth of always landing on their feet probably comes from their tendency to recover quickly from any misstep. Even so, tossing your furry friend out the window to test this theory probably isn't advisable. Hair and fingernails continue to grow after death. This myth is at least born out of some degree of reality, seeing as how corpses can often boast fingernails and hair strands that measure longer than when the poor souls were buried 6 feet under. But contrary to appearances, the dead are left with neither fingernails nor hair that is kept on living past their own expiration date. What seems like hair and nail growth is actually the recession of skin and muscle, thereby revealing previously hidden away hair and nail follicles that sit closer to the root. Turkey makes you sleepy. This much-beloved holiday meal tradition often gets a bad rap. Not only is turkey a disparaging slur that is synonymous with being foolish, but it has also come to be blamed for causing fatigue in those who consume it. Yes, turkey contains tryptophan, a sedative that can lead to drowsiness, but beef and chicken both contain the same levels and are rarely blamed for family members who can't keep their eyes open at the dinner table. Because of its association with holidays like Christmas and Thanksgiving, the sleep-causing rep of turkey likely stems from the coincidence of often being tied to big meals during active family gatherings. The full moon affects behavior. Isolated incidents of odd behavior during a full moon have proliferated this theory, which is supported by the belief that water in the brain is affected by the tidal forces of the moon. It's a cool theory, but people behave weirdly at other times too, and it simply isn't true. While an extremely limited correlation between a spike in erratic behavior and the presence of the full moon has been found in some studies, no evident causation has been discovered, and it seems to be more of a fluke than anything else. Certainly not worth police force increasing their staffing, as the British police forces have been known to do in the past. Marie Antoinette's famous last words. "Let them eat cake." It has become a cruel yet widely popular historical quote that highlights the stark class disparity that helped necessitate the French Revolution. The problem is that 18th century French Queen Marie Antoinette, to whom the quote is attributed, never uttered the phrase. Instead, most historians point to the 18th century French author Jean-Jacques Rousseau, who wrote of an arrogant princess with little regard or concern for the poor. Some also believe the words came from Spain's Maria Theresa. Hair returns thicker and fuller when cut. On one memorable episode of Seinfeld, Jerry was made into a believer of the myth that hair will return thicker after being cut when Kramer horrified him by displaying, off-screen, his supposedly hairy chest. Of course, this was just a mostly fictional TV show, and the theory about hair growth is just a myth. Any hair visible outside of the skin isn't actually alive, with live follicles instead living underneath the skin and scalp. The theory has emerged from what is actually little more than a special effect. We are seeing hair at a different stage of growth than when it was shaved or cut, and regrown hair initially starts darker and then lightens due to sun exposure. Walt Disney was frozen after death. While it has come to run rampant in the era of gossip mags, tabloid journalism, and TMZ-style in-your-face paparazzi, there has always existed a public fascination over celebrities and their lifestyle. For someone like Walt Disney, this fascination was only magnified by his obsessively private nature. When Disney died in December of 1966, cryogenic storage had just entered the public consciousness, leading to rumors about the true fate of either his body or his head, depending on which myth you believe. However, his death certificate verifies that he was cremated after passing, a fact that his family has tried to make clear in the Walt Disney Family Museum. There's a dark side of the moon. It's probably fair to blame this one on Pink Floyd. Our vantage point from Earth only reveals a total of 59% of the moon's surface, meaning that 41% remains forever hidden from our sightlines. What it doesn't mean, however, is that the 41% is shrouded in eternal darkness. The confusion stems from a process known as tidal locking, whereby the moon appears as though it isn't rotating, but is actually spiraling very slowly. During this time, the sun is slowly covering portions of the moon that remain invisible to us. While we refer to the sun reflecting off the entirety of our view of the moon as a full moon, any other phase features sunlight shining off the other side. So, how many of these myths did you believe? Let us know in the comments. And while you're here, don't you dare forget to click like and subscribe. Thanks!